So hello and welcome to the Expat Pod. My name is James, your host, and today I'm joined by Trent. And Trent, you and I met via, I guess, a guest servicing for podcast hosting or podcast guest appearances, or whichever way you want to call it, really. But if you give a quick introduction about yourself, where you've lived, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from North Louisiana, just a regular city, Shreveport, Louisiana. Had, all the regular comforts of life, but nothing really special. Went to college, went to university like most people do, graduated, moved to Dallas, lived there for a while, was an IT consultant guy, got burned out on that a little bit, and wanted to do some of the things that I wanted to do with my life, so I moved to Spain, tried to learn Spanish, which was a disaster, and then taught English, which was a really cool experience. Basically ended up broke after about a year and went back into IT, started doing worldwide projects and things like that. Ended up at the bottom end of the world in New Zealand. Wanted to try to get into Aussie, couldn't because of the visa thing and all the stuff. I was ready to rock, so I got a visitor visa into New Zealand, had a few interviews, got into IT there again doing stuff, traveled to different projects from there, and then I started a kettle corn manufacturing business on the weekend. They didn't have kettle corn there. I met an American guy that had done it in his home state of Washington. We had an opportunity, started on the weekends. It blew up, went crazy. Did that for 14 years. Actually got out of the IT thing and did the popcorn full-time for 14 years. And then in the last 3-4 years, I've moved back to the States. So I'm back here again.
Nice. Wow. What a journey you've been on. And I'm sure we'll unpack that as we go through the podcast. So hello and welcome to section 1 of the podcast, all about getting there. So Trent, this is essentially everything you need to do before you got on a plane or left the country you were living in. So let's start from the US then. So obviously you finished college, you wanted to go and live in Spain. So why Spain? Why Spanish? What was the link? Was there something in your childhood which made you want to go there, or in college or whatever? What made you want to move?
There was kind of two things, that I was interested in. Well, really several in college, but it was like I got a chance to do the IT thing, right? So it was like the IT thing or learn another language. 20 years ago, it was like, what are you going to do? You're going to kind of do the Spanish thing, or is it going to be some sort of an Asian language, probably Mandarin or something, right? And I'm like, there's no way with that. So, I had that desire to try to do that, and I'd done the IT thing for several years, and I got burned out, man. It was hard work. It was tough. It was a pressure cooker kind of environment. I just needed a break. So I took the summer off, and I was working with my buddy in Dallas at his lawn business. And he had decided, we worked all summer together. It was good. It was fun. And he, one day he just came in. He said, "Look, I'm moving back to New Orleans and to be with my girlfriend. We've been talking for months. We're going to work it out." And it's like, what a surprise. I didn't even know I'd been talking for a year, And he's like, "We've decided we're going to try to make this thing work. I'm leaving in a month and I'm doing my own thing down there." And I thought, well, I can't stay here and I'm not going back to IT. So what's my next thing on my agenda? And I had always wanted to try to do the Spanish thing, right? Learn Spanish, learn another language. I thought that would make me more versatile. The other thing was I always wanted to see if I wanted to be a teacher of some sort, not kids, maybe college. And I thought a nice way to do that would be to try to teach some English and see kind of in that setting without committing to going back to school and several years of that. And then, the whole thing about Europe, man, we see all that stuff in our history books, and all this, and it's like, I want to see that stuff for real. I want to see the Eiffel Tower, man. I want to see Big Ben, I want to see the Colosseum. I want to see Rome. So, I looked at going to different places with the Spanish, South America or Central America. And I thought, let's go where it all started, right? Where it originated. And then, I found a school that I could get certified with the English, and have students in the school and then take some Spanish classes, all kind of in the same area, put me in Madrid. And I thought, man, I can just take the train or the bus wherever I want to go on my holidays. So that's kind of how I decided to do the Spain thing.
Nice. And when you were looking for companies, then what did you guys search for? What did you have advice? Did you know anyone who did it before?
God, you know what? I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I showed up, and I couldn't even speak Spanish. Now that was bad, really bad, But we've all been told is that if you want to learn a language, man, you have to immerse yourself in it. You have to just go and drop yourself in it and eventually you'll learn. Well, that's easier said than done. It really is. It was very difficult for me to learn Spanish. I had to study a lot. I realized with some of the other people, like the German girls in my class, for example, they had grown up, speaking German, obviously. They had been learning English all through, as they had grown up. And I think that people that do that when they're younger, it's easier for them to learn a language. And so, like in class, they would speak German to each other. They would speak English to me because they knew I could speak English because I couldn't talk to anybody. And then when the teacher came in, we would do Spanish, so, I mean, I did okay. I got, after a year, maybe kind of intermediate-ish, but God, man, it was tough. I really had to study a lot. It was a tough thing to do. It was probably the second most challenging thing I've ever attempted to do in my life. So that kind of gives you of how hard it was. Yeah, I really, man, I just did my research. I was like, this is what I want. I want to be in a school where I can get certified, that's going to give me some students, and that I can maybe work a deal with them where, I can get some Spanish classes as well. And that is what happened, right? That is what happened. I got certified, I got students, and they would give me options of, going out. I kind of had a niche in the business English area. So, because I'd had 5 years of corporate experience. And so I got to teach, some people that, were in the corporate world and some things like that. So that was kind of neat, and then the Spanish thing, man, they actually, since I had done all that stuff, they just let me tag along in a class for free. So I didn't have to pay any tuition for my Spanish class. So, that was a good deal for me. That worked out really good. Yeah. And it was in the heart of Madrid, right in the middle of Spain, in the middle of the city. And so, I could get anywhere I needed to, on the subway. And, I looked at all that kind of stuff and everything, in my research. I looked hard a lot. I looked for a couple weeks every single day, like a job, trying to figure out, comparing the schools, comparing the places, comparing where I wanted to go. And, over time, if you study and you just keep doing it, you'll narrow things down and you'll narrow it down. But it's just hard work, right? It's hard work. If you want what you're looking for, which what I was looking for in that regard was hard to find, right? A school that did all these things, but I found it, and it was definitely, in the end, the hard work was worth it. It was the right choice. And, I was happy with working with them for the year that I was there.
When you were doing all that research, all the kind of work up front, how long did that take from going, I want to live in Spain, to actually making it happen, getting the job?
I would say it probably took me, it was pretty fast, actually, probably about 4 or 5 weeks, because my buddy, it was quick, right? Because my buddy said, look, I'm giving you notice, I'm out of here in a month. And I'm like, well, obviously, and I'm not going to stay around here. There was a house that was attached, he had a house, and I had a room with him in the house. And I just thought, this is my deadline. I just got to make something happen. So, but all the stuff, right? You have to do all the things. I had to get my passport sorted out. I'd already had a passport, but I had to get it renewed. I had to sell all of my gear, all of my furniture, all of my stuff. I had to wrap all that up, prepare for that. I had a motorcycle, I had a car, I had all my I had a lot of things, right? And, had to coordinate getting rid of all that stuff and organize that I was going to be gone for a while, at least a year. So, the things that I didn't get rid of, I packed up in my 4Runner and loaded up and went to mom and dad's house and put it in the attic and drove to North Carolina and gave my brother my truck and, got on the plane, and that was it. So it was a lot of preparation, but it went quickly. I moved pretty quickly on it. So
when you had to go certified to teach them, was that in the US or was that in Spain?
That was in Spain.
Okay, so you had time. It wasn't part of the 5 weeks.
Yeah, the 5 weeks is getting ready to get over there and go. And obviously I had to get my finances in order and wrap a lot of things up like that. And with my company, I had to deal with them. It was like that was when it was cool to kind of do this 1 year sabbatical thing. And I kind of knew, well, if I'm going to go there and do Spain, I'm probably not going to go back. So wind down on the job situation and just kind of the typical things that you do.
When you moved, was that on a tourist visa then, or was that on a student visa? You would know you would get a work visa. What did you need? Or have you got a European heritage which made it easier for you?
Back then, man, we just had like a reciprocal agreement, like to just show up, like as a tourist, and that's what I did, man. That's when the EU, everybody was, the EU had come in and people were able to travel freely between the countries and all that kind of stuff. So there wasn't too much, and really, with going over there, they weren't concerned. They weren't concerned about my visa status in Spain, man. A lot bigger fish to fry than worrying about an American teaching English, quite frankly.
And then once you lived in Spain, you then got the chance to move to New Zealand?
Yeah, so I did the Spain thing, so I got certified in English and I did all that. And I'll just touch on the Spain thing a little bit, right? Spain was awesome. And on my summer holidays and my Christmas holidays, I traveled, or on the weekend, if there was something like, running of the bulls, man, me and one of my teacher buddies, we would get on the bus and we would go. Or, Las Fallas, the big thing where they do in Valencia. And, we would go around to try to hit stuff. I didn't get to do Oktoberfest, which is one of the things I would have the awesome excuse to go back and do sometime, but that was cool. And, the thing with Europe is very easy to get around. They have those super cheap flights, right? You can get those super things like Ryanair or whatever. But also, getting the Euro pass is a good idea. It was a couple €100 and you get the thing, maybe back then it was for a month or something. And I like to ride on the train, man. You get to see the countryside, and, you get on a plane. You get there, you get up in the air, you land, you don't get to see all the changes in the topography and the people and the stuff and, stop at the stations. I mean, I would encourage people to go overland, That's the way to do it. And the bus isn't too bad either, but, you're cooped up on a bus, right? Sometimes they don't have a bathroom. On the train, you can get up, you can walk around, you can go to the viewing car, you can go to the food, cart, or, I love traveling on the train. It was really easy. It was cheap. We did, stayed in hostels a lot, met a lot of cool people that way. Because, Americans like to stay in hotels. We stay in a hotel. You go in your hotel room, you close the door, that's you. You're with whoever you're with. You don't get to meet anybody. In a hostel, a lot of those situations are, you're in a bunk room with, could be 6 people, could be 26 people, right? But it's all part of that experience and part of that thing, of doing that. And, I wanted to get my part of my worldly education doing that, meeting people, understanding different cultures, trying their food, having the issues with communication. You learn stuff with all that kind of things. And sometimes, you know what? Maybe they do it better than you do. Maybe they have a better way of life than what you do and things like that. One of the funny things, people, are always like, well, you move to Spain and immerse yourself in the language, right? You'll learn it. Well, not really. Okay. Because you take the easy way, right? I hung out with the English teachers on the weekend because I didn't have any Spanish friends. Now, here's the other thing they would say. Well, if you're learning Spanish, you got to get a Spanish girlfriend, right? Well, here's the thing. If you can't speak Spanish to them, they won't talk to you. So it doesn't work, right? Yeah, here's one. This was my introduction to traveling internationally on my own, the first thing. And this was pretty bad. This was pretty tragic. About second day I was there, go to orientation, we do our thing, and the director said, he led the meeting and he said, look, we told you guys to bring traveler's checks over here and, not cash your traveler's checks to come and pay your tuition, right? Because it was several $1,000s to do that. And, if you need anything from us, we're here from you. It was a guy that was from California. He had lived in Spain about 20 years, man. He had a Spanish wife. He was fluent. Very nice guy. He's like, look, we're your family away from home. If you need anything, we're here for you. So, we had the orientation and I had a day in between. So I was going to go cash my traveler's checks, pay my tuition, and I had gotten into a flat. I had met a guy that had like a English father and a Spanish mother. So he was fluent, and his job was, I found him in one of these expat, like online newsletter things. And his job was, he placed people in flats, and he kind of brokered the deal, right? Because I couldn't speak to him. So I ended up where I wanted to be, but not necessarily who I wanted to be with. I just wanted to get in a place and not be in a hostel when I started my my course, Yeah, I need some stability, right? So I got in that. This guy brokered this deal for me, and I got into a flat with 3 Bulgarian dudes. they were like construction workers, right? And they'd come over, and immediately people were like, oh my gosh, it was a bit silly living with Bulgarian guys in Spain, but one of them spoke Spanish, one of them spoke English, and the other one couldn't, he could speak Bulgarian. So we all could talk, communicate and everything. But this guy told me, he said, look, be careful the first couple days you're here until you know these guys, right? Take your belongings with you. Things have happened where potentially you could show up, the locks are changed, they took all your stuff, took your computer, took your cash, took your credit cards, anything. This could happen in anywhere in Europe. Just be vigilant until you know them and trust them, till they're your friends. Okay, cool. So I went out, I took all my stuff with me, everything I had. Computer, laptop, everything, right? In my backpack, and I went around that morning to cash my traveler checks, go to the school, pay my stuff on the Friday, start class on Monday. I'm going around to the banks, on the main street in Madrid, man, walking in there with my broken Spanish, trying to cash these traveler's checks. Won't do it, man. I can't understand what they're saying. I can't understand why. It was just a disaster. And I had walked around for hours. And these long queues in the bank, you're waiting 30 minutes, an hour. You get up there, you talk to them. No go, man. I mean, this took me 4 or 5 hours all morning walking around. I'm like, I'm never going to get this done. Finally, this guy said, he spoke some English. He said, you have to go to the American Express office or American Express checks. And I'm like, okay, all right, okay. So I went there, right? And I thought, you know what? This place is so far away from my flat, and it's going to take forever to get down here again. I'm worn out. I'm tired. I've been walking around. I'm cashing it all. Okay, it's like 5,000 euros. Cashed them all. Put my backpack on. Headed to the school. Right. I was going straight to the school, pay my tuition, and then pay my rent. And have this thing done. Right. Well, on the way there, right, at a couple blocks from the American Express office, I'm walking. Beelining it. Something wet comes over the back of my head, my hair, back of my shirt, and I'm thinking, somebody just threw their dishwater out on me, or their mop water over their terrace. In Spain, especially in Madrid, they have these little terrace things, and people just put their plants on them. But a lot of people, they just throw their crap over the side, right? And if you're in the street, man, it gets on you, your problem. So I thought that's what had happened. And, I kind of stopped, and then I started like, what is this, So this big man came up to me. He was wearing a suit, looked super tidy. Big guy like a big rugby player or football player. And he had a napkin, and he kind of wiped me, and he's like, poo-poo. And I'm like, what? Is this poop? And I'm like, oh my God, it's like diarrhea poop. It's like, it's horrible, And I think, oh my God, I can't go to the school like this. That'd be embarrassing. So I had his shirt in my bag, put my bag down, take my shirt off. And while I'm cleaning myself off, okay, this guy, I didn't realize he was so big. He changed my bag on me. So he had a black bag, similar to mine, with a backpack. I mean, it looked like, at the side of your eye, you would have never realized. You would have had to look at it. It was basically identical, right? So he changed my bag. I didn't realize that because I had taken my shirt off. So in the middle of me taking my shirt, he just real quick. And he talked to me for a minute. He's really nice, and he walked off. Then a lady comes up to me that was dressed like a police lady, right? Has a little pad, writing things down, starts talking to me in Spanish. Asking me all these questions, like, I don't know, I can't tell. And I'm like, I'm sure I look weird standing here in the street, with my half shirt off, what am I doing, right? And then kind of talking to her, I looked down, and we were had been in this doorway, I kind of stepped in the doorway off the sidewalk, and it was right in that corner. And I looked down, and I was like, they got me. And a lot of times in Europe, right, they don't want a confrontation. They don't want violence. They don't want to fight. They just want your stuff, right? And they don't even want your passport, really. They just want, your jewelry, your watch, your phone, something small of value. And I had seen it, and I had known, and I had read up about all, these scams and all this crap and everything, because I knew something could happen. And I knew that a lot of times, right, they'll just take your bag, they'll take their stuff, they'll throw it on the side, and they'll just, run down the road, and then, whatever. You don't care because all they got was your cash or whatever, right? At least you got your passport or your credit cards and all that stuff. Gone. Everything. Okay? This is my passport, my credit cards, all the money, my computer, my house key, my driver's license, everything, dude. I mean, and I sold all my stuff, right? I sold all my stuff, converted it to these traveler's checks. I mean, I'd sold my motorcycle, all my furniture, all my crap. That was everything I had. I mean, I was in like meltdown mode, right? I went straight to the school, straight into the director's office, and I told him what happened. I was very unstable at the time. And I was just like, man, I mean, that was everything I owned. We were on the third floor, and I said, dude, if you don't help me, I'm going to jump out that window. Like I was just off my rock for a minute, right? And so, we called my parents. We canceled everything, He took me to the police station. We canceled everything we could. He called my flatmates. He told them what happened, took me to my house, gave me some money, until my parents could wire me some. And you know what? In the end, man, this guy gave me my tuition for free. And he said, you know what? There's somebody that has done this to us once before, but he was lying. He was trying to trick us. And he said, I know. Because I said, look, I'm going home. I was on the phone with my parents crying, I'm going home. I'm coming home. I'm done. I don't have anything. I'm broke. What am I going to do? Well, my parents were like, just stay through the weekend. You got enough money to get through the weekend. We'll fix it up. We'll help you out. And I'm like, no, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. They're like, no, you're not. You're not coming home. Stay the weekend. Talk to us on Monday. Right. So then, and then it was like, I stayed, and I was just, man, I was so disappointed with myself. And then I talked to my folks, a week later, and they're like, just stay. We're sending you a laptop. You got enough money, and so over that year, man, I didn't have much cream. I didn't have much cream to play with, man. It was pretty tight for that year, but, I made it, man. I made it for a year on, 15 euros an hour, working part-time. You can't work 40 hours a week being a tutor, man. You don't have enough time, going from here to there and everything. And the money was tight, and, I had to live like that for a year, but you know what? I wouldn't trade the experience. I wouldn't trade anything that happened. I met some awesome people. I went everywhere I wanted to go. In Europe, I didn't, I had to do it on the cheap, but I found a way, man. I figured it out, This story will mean something when we get down the road, when we get into some of the stuff later in New Zealand. So, I stuck it out and it was worth it. And I'm so glad that I did, man. I never would have gotten the opportunities, the friendships, the people, and all the stuff, because one bad thing happened, I was going to hang it all up, right? You go somewhere like that, it's cool, but dude, be very careful about your stuff. Like if you have a bag, you better have it wrapped around your leg all the time. You better have something in it. Only take what you need for the day. You put your wallet in your front pocket. You probably know all that stuff, right? But a lot of people don't, that are like an American like me that hadn't traveled much, right? And in the States, no one worries about stuff like that.
Yeah, it's you hearing going on holiday, especially from the UK, we're probably quite used to it. We don't have as much pickpocketing maybe as Spain, but it's still something you have to be vigilant for, because it's so easy to just take something or swap something and you out here, put your bag through your foot, or because there's Las Ramblas in Barcelona is quite famous for pickpocketing. And then my friends had a phone stolen there, had a passport stolen there. I've not had anything stolen, touch wood, but it's something which people have gone through, unfortunately.
It is one of those things that happen, and the people that are doing it, they've justified it to themselves because they size you up and they see, you know what, this guy's better off than me, and I'm taking whatever I can get, and they're not going to miss it, right? Not going to hurt.
Well, it's desperation as well, though, right? It's like you get it in most countries. I've got friends from Brazil, and they say if you walk around with your phone, there's a chance it gets stolen. And a lot of places where there is inequality, which is probably why it's going worse in the UK, because we've got such a lot of inequality at the moment. Thefts are happening more. There's a lot of scams going on. There's a lot of things going on which aren't necessarily in your face or in person, but a lot of people trying to be opportunistic where they can, because desperation. It's hard to earn a living which is comfortable anymore, or not as easy as it used to be anyway. So if you're desperate, you will bend the rules, or you will justify it because you have a family to feed, you have things to do. Some of it can be greed completely, but a lot of it's probably just desperation. Staying on Spain then, should we talk about what kind of culture outside of that awful event which happened to you? But once you kind of settled down then, what was it like to live in Spain and to experience it? How long did it take you to start to be able to talk some Spanish?
It was so awesome. I did spend a good bit of time alone, and not being able to speak to people, which was kind of cool at times, because when I go home, man, I'd be on my own. I'd do my own thing, right? I couldn't talk to my roommates. I mean, after some time, right, I was like, I love these guys. They're awesome dudes, but I'm moving in with some Spanish dudes, right? And that's what I did to facilitate and help my Spanish. But, the people are awesome. It's a different way of life. They're very laid back. It's just Europe, man. The Spanish people are awesome. They're happy. They love life. Most of them, it's not like, the typical American, they live life. If they've got enough, money to do what they want, they're happy. They don't need the material things. They don't need all the extra. And they love to go out, man. And it's about relationships and, enjoying each other and, sitting around, man. And, you have your little aperitivos and you nibble on things and you have a beer and, they don't, they like to party. They love to party. But, and some of them, they go out and get hammered. But in general, man, they like to have a drink, but they don't go out and just get smashed up, sloshed, and act a fool, right? Some people do. That happens everywhere, right? There's exception to everything. Generally, they're going to have a couple glasses of wine or a couple of beers, and they want to hang out and they want to talk. It's part of the, of the going out. It's not the reason you're going out, right? Or doing things. I loved it, man. I felt welcome in most places, and once I did get a little bit of Spanish and I showed some effort, that, they were helpful to do that. No mercy, like with the speed, like if they, it's like, can you repeat that for me? You ask them to repeat it. They just say it in the same speed they did. And it's like, I can't, it's so fast. I can't get it right. But I got okay with like reading and writing and doing that kind of thing. And, so I could do that pretty well. It's just, and I could even speak what I wanted, right? Because I knew my vocabulary. It was, listening to someone was really the hard thing. And if they knew, if they kind of knew, some people would they'll meet you, where they can, and then a lot of the older people, they don't even realize, they just it's just the same thing, you ask them to repeat it, and what they do, right? They just say it louder.
We're the same in English-speaking countries, to be fair, as well. So.
But God, man, I embraced it, man. I learned how to make tortillas, and I would sit around with my Spanish roommates on the weekend. We'd have a Sunday dinner. We'd all cook and we'd sit around. We would talk, and people could communicate and get the feel of somebody without speaking the language, right? That's what I learned. You get a feel for somebody, and I can hang out with my roommates, and we can have limited conversations, but we all we knew, right? They were good guys. They were quality dudes. I knew I could trust them, and even my Bulgarian roommates, man. They were tough guys, man. Like some of them bounced, were bouncers at the club, right? And that was cool because when we would go out, we could get in for free because they were all the doormen. They were nice guys, man. They treated me like their brother.
Yeah.
They would go with me. Like after that happened, it was like if I needed to go down to the bank, to the ATM, one of them would go with me. He would walk with me, and make sure nothing would happen. They just, it's all about the value of the person, man. And our food, we cooked for each other, we did things, it was just like you would do for your friend, a friend is a friend, that's all there is to it. You don't necessarily have to be able to speak the language all the time to communicate and build a friendship.
Well, in communication, language is about 20% of communication. It's body language, it's tone, it's all the other stuff you do. That stat could be massively out with, so don't quote me on that. But I know it's a smaller portion of how you communicate is from the actual word you use or language you use in that sense. Kind of going forward then, so you kind of spent a year in Spain, you left, you then went to go live in New Zealand. So what was the reason for living in New Zealand? What was the purpose for that?
My long-term plan was to come back and work with my dad. My dad was in the oil business. I wanted to eventually kind of maybe take over his position. That was kind of the idea. And he said, look, I need somebody. You've done your year in Europe, you've gone off and had your fun, right? And, now you want to go somewhere else. I'm not going to wait forever. So, you want to go down under, go do your thing for a year and come back. Okay. All right. I got you. And you know what? After that year, of not having much money and living tight and everything, I was kind of broke, and I needed to get back to making some money. And I knew I wasn't going to do IT in Spain. The next best thing wasn't, again, man, I went back to my research, man. I poured myself into the internet looking, where can I go that the dollar's good, that they respect IT stuff. And New Zealand is a bit of a test bed for new innovation and new things and stuff like that because the country's so small, right? So they'll release new products and new things, nationwide and test them out. If they work, they blow them out to the rest of the world. If they don't, well, then they shut it down. And here's the thing, in New Zealand, you don't have another choice. So you're just going to live with what you got, right? I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. There's not a lot of choices of things. And so, I knew that reading it, and I knew I could get a job. And plus I was on the skills shortage list. So I went in and automatically, I had my resident thing, my resident visa deal going, and the clock was ticking for that. So, I'm glad I went to New Zealand over Australia. In hindsight, it was a better place to go. The country's awesome. The people are wonderful. It was great, man. I lived there, 17 years.
And then your first impressions of New Zealand then, how long was the flight? Or and how many flights did you take?
That was the longest flight I'd ever taken in the beginning. And now, man, an international overnight flight, I'm all up for that, right? I get fed, I get to sleep, you get a couple meals, you do a domestic here in the States, man. You got to buy your own, snack now. So, it was a long flight, and, I was on the cheap. So, I had to connect in Fiji, and so that was, so I flew from, the middle of the country to LA, then LA to Fiji, and then Fiji to New Zealand. That took me about 24 hours in total. And, flying time, it was about probably about 16 hours, broken up. The big flight, the flight between LA and Fiji, I think is like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something, maybe. I can't remember. And then the flight in between there is like 3 hours, 3 or 4. So, but, I never did that again because it killed me. I got off in the middle of the night, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. They lock you in this terminal. Can't get on the flight to New Zealand for 4 or 5 hours. There's nothing there but a snack machine, man. I mean, it is just a dead, bare bones terminal of nothing. That was back then. I'm sure they've changed, but I was like, you know what? I'm paying an extra couple $100 next time to go direct. It just wasn't worth that layover, man. That killed me, So, you live and learn, right? You figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're younger, you have less money but more time, so you can make that choice, right? And then you get to New Zealand. Whereabouts in New Zealand were you based? Was it North, South Island?
I was in Auckland, big city. That has the most business, and so I landed there and ended up working there in the city, and that's where I started the kettle porn business thing, and it was the most opportunity. I got like 3 big cities in New Zealand, and the most things happen, the most opportunity, the most whatever is definitely in Auckland. So that's where I stayed for the entire time. But man, I traveled all over the country, from top to bottom, went everywhere on my holidays, on my weekends, everything, did that. So, I'm a citizen. I got my passport. I'm half Kiwi, if you will. I don't really sound like it, but I believe very firmly in New Zealand made, and we, bought all our ingredients and our stuff from New Zealand, and I hired, people that were legally in New Zealand and did that, I believe firmly, in supporting your local economy, and your local people, and, I'm paying the taxes to do that. So let's keep it here. Right. But, after some time, we saturated the country, that's part of the problem. It's so small that, the marketing costs weren't bad to get the stuff nationwide and to cover the country for people to know what our product was. But, you ran out of real estate, man. 5 million people's not that many. So then, the international opportunities like Singapore and Malaysia and the Middle East that we service well.
When you first arrived in New Zealand, how long until you then started this business? What were you doing for that first period? You were doing IT consulting.
First 4 or 5 years, I was working in IT, mainly the telecom deal down there. But I was a contractor, so I was just a hired gun. I wasn't, employed, and to go on these other projects. So I worked in Australia on a project for 3 or 4 months. I got a deal in Indonesia that nobody wanted to do. I went to Jakarta and worked there for 5 weeks on a project and did an install with these guys and helped them get a system up and running there, and I had some opportunities like that from New Zealand, but I always kept circling back. The first 4 or 5 years, and, again, man, I was like, new place, different deal, but, it's still the same thing, sitting behind this desk doing a lot of the same stuff. And I started getting tired of it. And I met this guy, this American guy. He'd come down, this manager with a couple of boxers. I happened to be in the boxing gym training. These American dudes showed up. They were training for some fights. They'd been there several weeks. And their manager, I really liked the guys, man. They were cool dudes. I did some training with them. I trained with the manager. And he said, look, in our home state of Washington, I do a kettle corn, popcorn at farmer markets and, outdoor events and stuff. In my home state of Washington, do they have kettle corn here? And we started looking around, went to, supermarkets and looked, and I know from living in the States that this kettle corn thing, it's at all, the craft fairs and the farmer markets, man, and that kettle corn, dude, people just go nuts for it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So we started a weekend business deal. Just going out to the local markets, and it just blew up, man. Over 14, 15 years, we grew. We started on the weekends, and then the cinemas got interested, and we had to, go from mom and pop weekend deal, making popcorn, at the local fair, hawking, down and dirty and rusty and sweaty and all that, to, getting a real bag and buying, production equipment. We got to be the number 2 popcorn in the country. Doing that, and had a couple factories and, 14, 15 staff members. And, eventually the market, the weekend and the market stuff bought the equipment for the manufacturing plant. And that was relative to the weekend cash money was big. So we stopped that after a few years. And that was kind of my thing, I was doing that, and small business. That's what I'd always want to do my own thing, have my own opportunity, Back, 20 years ago, the definition that everybody called success was, you had to do your own thing. You couldn't work for somebody, right? That's the only way you're ever going to get rich and make a lot of money and whatever. I bought that whole thing. And in 2019, I started limping around my factory. Went to 2 or 3 doctors, and it wasn't getting better. It just kept getting worse. This is the spring of 2019. And I had to go into the hospital to get some blood work done. For something totally unrelated to me limping around, and the hematologist, I was on a pretty frank, kind of relationship with her. She's very direct with me. I liked her a lot, super cool. I actually had her mobile number, for setting up appointments and things like that. We just kind of got on, it happens sometimes. And she said, look, Trent, you're getting an x-ray today. And, I said, I don't need an x-ray. I've got a torn butt muscle. I've been to 3 doctors about this. She's like, it's something more than that. I said, okay. So I got an x-ray. Week later, I got that call, man. One of those calls that changes the direction of your life, knocks you over. And I'm on my way to lunch, take the call, and she said, look, you have aggressive hip bone cancer. You have about a 1/4 inch, about 4 mil, a bone holding your leg on. Every step you take, you're in danger of breaking your leg off. We're surprised you haven't broken your leg yet. If you break your leg, it's coming off. We'll have to amputate it. We can't save it. You need to get to the hospital right now, to the emergency room. We're admitting you, and you got to come in right now. Wow. Okay. So that's my whole that's where the cancer journey thing started. So, it's public health care, and no one really has private insurance. It's just kind of how it goes, and I was the same as everybody else. So here we go into this public health care machine. So they decided, okay, what we're going to do is cut the cancer out and put an implant in. Okay, sounds all right to me. It would take them a couple months to create the implant. And then they would be ready to do the surgery, but the cancer had progressed. And so the implant wouldn't fit. So we had to start over, right? Third time, this is 6 months down the road, in and out of the hospital, trying to run my business, frustrated with this whole, takes forever, to get a scan or whatever, and I'm trying to run my business. So it was a mess. It was a fiasco, and my leg's getting worse and worse, man. I was in a wheelchair by then, dragging my leg around. You can't imagine. So third time I said, look, it's too far gone. We're cutting your leg off. Well, I lost it, and by then my parents had been on the phone. I had my dad on the phone. He said, look, you're not cutting this guy's leg off. He's a fighter. He's not a quitter. You don't know my son. You have to give him a chance. He said, well, look, I can't guarantee anything. It's going to be shorter than the other because we're removing all this bone. And we suggest cutting it off. He'll have a better quality of life. I'm not going to guarantee the functionality, the feeling, or anything, but we'll leave the leg. Okay. That's it. We'll leave it. So they left it. They got the cancer, but it got infected. Several more surgeries. remained infected, 4 or 5 months in the hospital, got out, mom and dad went home. I'm still trying to run my business, and we're staying, okay. We're staying afloat. Got out, mom and dad went home. Next scan, you have pancreatic and lung cancer. What? My God, are you kidding me? Okay, all right. So pancreatic is less than a 5% chance to make it. So obviously that's the more serious thing. Between the diagnosis and the surgery, COVID hit, and they locked us down, right? Like animals in the zoo, man. Very lonely, no visitors in the hospital, nothing. Had that surgery, okay, successful, all good. When we had the debrief, they're like, well, congratulations, you don't have cancer, Trent. I'm like, why did we do the surgery? What happened? They said, well, it was a misdiagnosis. It was actually a blood clot. So we removed half your pancreas and spleen accidentally. Okay, great. Okay, all right. So then that happened. Next thing is lung cancer, right? So I get the lung cut out. They want to do another leg surgery to remove the wire. So they do that. And I went to a couple private doctors, and, they're like, look, Trent, there's nothing we can do. It's too far gone. We can't do surgery. It's too risky or anything. I'm like, well, what are my options? It's like, you don't have any. I'm like, oh my God, we've waited too long and now I'm going to die. Right. And so then talked to my parents, and, they give me a year to live. So I decided to come home and live with my folks, and, in talking with them, I figured out I could actually get some insurance in the States. They changed some of the laws since I've been gone, because pre-existing conditions, man, would exclude me. But I could find insurance, and I did that, and I got that done. Long story short, I got back. We zapped the tumor that had grown to the size of a freaking softball by then. Zapped it, got over that, did some immunotherapy, got the infection cleared up, went to Mayo Clinic, went all over the world, all over the country, trying to find a doctor that would do this implant, because I was told, you'll never walk again. There's nothing left to bolt anything to. Nothing we can do. And I went to Mayo Clinic. That's one of the best clinics in the world. And, about 6 months ago, I got the largest, most complex hip implant ever done in the world. I'm a few months from walking, man. I'm on one crutch. So, that's a little bit part of my story as well. I figured, that's what got me back to the States. I still would be in New Zealand if not, right?
No, well, thank you for sharing. It must be very difficult to still be in that situation you're in now, I guess, still on the journey to recovery. Going back to your thoughts then, in terms of when you were in New Zealand, how did you find the healthcare system compared to what you were expecting based on growing up in the US?
You know what? I mean, it's very different. It's very, very different. Most people are in private healthcare here in the States. And the thing I say is, anything that the government is involved in, it's nice because, it's kind of free, but it takes forever. And, the service takes a long time to get done. And it's usually kind of average quality, right? And so that would pretty much be the same with the healthcare in New Zealand. I feel like more in the public, it's more of a business. It's a business all the way around, right? Because people are making money. But I feel like, in the public thing, the government controls the rules. They had just decided, right? I know looking back, they had decided, we're not going to waste any more money on this guy with his pancreas thing. We're done. It's all about percentages, right? Less than a 5% chance. We're not going to waste the money and do this. And I get it. I don't blame any of the doctors or anything. The system is just, it's not good for that, And part of the thing is, they did this massive surgery, with this pancreas and removing these organs that obviously, God would put in your body if he thinks you needed them, and I'm functioning without them. But I've got some things that I have to deal with because I don't have, part of what I did have, and there's no consequences. They didn't care. It was just like, well, you can fill out a complaint report if you'd like to. And I'm like, I'm looking at the rubbish bin and I'm like, I'm going to fill this out. You're just going to throw it in the rubbish bin. You don't care. In the States, it may not be the best thing, but the consequences for private healthcare are, you make a mistake, you do something wrong, you're negligent, they sue you, right? So, the consequence is, you mess up, they're going to try to take your money. And you don't have that consequence in that particular setting. People, it's all about like, what is your self, what is your self-discipline? What are your self-values? You do it because, your respect for people, not necessarily because this is the consequence. And, I don't think the public thing, the way that's set up is the best either. But at least it's some checks and balances, because in the public thing, this guy's still practicing surgery. He was the same guy that cut my pancreas out. That was the same guy that I had to see when I got pancreas cancer again, and I wanted someone else. It's like, no, this is the best guy in the country. He's the best surgeon. This is who you got. This is who you're going to stick with. And I'm just like, I don't really want to work with this guy anymore. I mean, after all that's happened, there's checks and balance. There's good and bad. There's pros and cons for both systems, and, we're human beings, man, and nothing's perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. Overall, man, my experience in New Zealand, outstanding. Love the country, love the place, love the people. I wouldn't have had an opportunity to start my business, do that, be successful from that standpoint. And, I built a life down there, man. My friends were there. My business was there. When it got down to the nitty gritty, I was very strongly thinking about, I'm just not going back. Whatever happens, happens. I'm probably not going to make it through this with nothing, with no treatment. And, I've lived here almost 20 years. I got my friends. I got my, I'm here. I have to go back to the States, start all over,
It was quite an abrupt end to your time in New Zealand. But when you were there, what were your kind of vehicles for making friends and things? Did you go to sports clubs? Did you do other hobbies? What were you going to do? Obviously, you had a business to run and a job, so your time was quite limited. Did you find other ways to make friends?
Yeah, man, always kind of, fitness has always been important to me. So, going to the gym and doing that thing. So I made some friends that way. And, just going around. I lived 600 meters from the beach. And one of my really good friends that I got to know owned a restaurant that was a 5-minute drive on the waterfront, in Mission Bay in New Zealand. Beautiful views, and it's got the sidewalk thing with the Mexican restaurant with the cantina on the side. And so, man, it's like in the UK, you show up to the pub and, somebody, that kind of thing. So, I just rock up on my own and knew somebody, and my buddy owned the place, got to be friends with a guy that owned it. He was, about my age, and all the local yokels that hung around. We were anywhere from, 25 to 75, we hung around there. And, this just, kind of our place that we met, that we would meet and hang out. I got into playing bowls. So, I was, a member at the bowls. Yeah, man. So I used to go hang out and do the bowls, usually a bunch of retired people do that, but, they're nice. They're fun. They're cool to hang out with. They'd have open night on like Thursday night, which is a good night to go have a couple beers toward the end of the week, and go do some bowls and drink some free beer and cheap beer and hang out with some nice people. And your friends would go and you'd hang out, maybe do a barbecue, and they'd have a hot dog. And, if you're a somewhat social person, man, and, you're decent, you got some values, you make friends anywhere, If you're a stick in the mud and you're hateful, and no one likes you, where you live, then no one's going to like you wherever else you're going to live.
It's a very good point. Yeah, people run away from the problems, but the problems just run with them because the problems are often internal, not environment based. So you need to kind of work on yourself as well. Often the change of scenery helps that, but over time you might fall back into the same routines of behavior. And like you said, if you're not necessarily a person people don't want to be friends with, then they won't be friends with you. So I say the best way to make new friends, I learned last time, was to be a friend. And then if you are a friend, then people will want to be your friend because they go, Trent, he helped me move house last month, or, he's, always bringing new friends to the bar or whatever, and that helps my business out. And, if he needs to move somewhere or, needs someone to help with something, then let's go help him. And that's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, it did honestly, for the first several years, it took me a while to really get some good friends. And I think part of that was because, man, there weren't any Americans down there 20 years ago, man. It took me probably about 10, 11, 12 years before I met more than 4 or 5 Americans. We just weren't there, right? And it was hard, the Kiwis, man, they're from there. They are there. They're cliquey, man. They have their own friends. They don't have a reason to make any other friends. So I got to be friends with a lot of the expats. They're in the same boat as you. And that's what's so cool about New Zealand, and especially Auckland, man. They've got probably, 100 different cultures there, man. People from all over the world. And that's part of the reason I love it. It's so mixed. There's a little bit of everything. And, Kiwis are nice. Kiwis are nice people. They're genuinely nice and they're open-minded. And so that creates a culture that the other cultures that come in to live there usually are. pretty nice and open-minded and friendly. And yeah, so, I was mainly friends with expats, and then there were some cool Kiwis, that like the guy that owned the cantina thing that, got the international thing. I mean, he spoke Spanish, kind of strangely enough, and loved to go to Mexico. And that's kind of the reason he did the Mexican food restaurant and cantina thing. And, so he kind of had that international mindset as well. So when you bring people together that are like that, they usually hang out, right? Like a lot of Americans, man, they don't go anywhere. When they go on vacation, they go to the beach. That's it. They get a couple weeks off a year. That's what they do. They don't have that open-minded international, kind of mindset, right? So they just hang around with the same people that do the same thing, and I just wanted something different out of life. I wanted an education that you can't get in a book, that you get from experiences and meeting people and trying the food, and some things you like, some things you don't, and doing that. Life is about experiences and relationships, and stuff like that. For me, the education that I got, you never learn sitting there, from a teacher in college from a book. You got to do that too, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a well-rounded, open-minded, studied person. It's like, oh, I have a friend, I have friends that are from India. Yeah, I understand, the different cultures, and, they have this caste system and the things, and, the different countries that I've been to and things like that, I think that says, a lot for a person.
I think you raise a good point. That's fundamentally why I'm doing this podcast as well, is because it's a chance to gain empathy for people who've lived in different countries and gained experiences of different environments and different worlds where it's not your own. You then get a bit of viewpoint. You get a more balanced viewpoint of international affairs, or quite interesting debates come in, and by having exposure to other people's viewpoints, to other people's decision making, you might then maybe not always agree with people, but you can understand why they would have that opinion, and it would then not be confrontational, but it would be a sense of, I get what you're saying, however, from my perspective, on my position, I still see it this way, but, let's have a beer about and laugh about it, or talk about it and debate it and just talk about it and know that both sides being respected. Feel that in the world today, you may see it in your country, I definitely see it in my country, that when there's a debate going on, it's not, you don't have those conversations like, you want something this way, I want something that way. Okay, let's understand why we both have that opinion, and then we can both learn something. Might not change our stances, but at least we understand the whole, 360 view of the problem. Whereas right now, it's, I'm on position X, you're on position Y, we can't be friends because you don't like X, don't like Y. It's a bit silly because fundamentally there's going to be about 100 or 120 different, instances where that's going to be a similar situation. And if you're so binary on it, nothing's going to happen because, every 4 years or wherever people elect people in, they're going to flip-flop because people are just changing their mind. We need to be a lot more balanced and travel and being an expat. I think one thing I said with the past was, there should be a conscription for living abroad or traveling abroad as much as possible, just so people can understand, how other systems work politically. Or because the UK has, democracy, which is a multi-party system, but realistically it's a two-party system. But there is other parties that exist where you can go somewhere else, which is a bit different. You go to China, so what communism's like, just understand how it works in different countries and what the opinions are, and how the people actually respond to it. Where it needs to be a thing you get. Developing on your time in New Zealand a bit more, then culturally, how different was it to the US? And when you look back at the US from experiencing New Zealand for so many years, did it change your opinion of the US?
Yeah, man, it is so different. It really is. We all speak English, right? But man, they speak quickly. They speak in a lot of cliches. They have an accent. I think it's one of the harder English languages to understand. For example, my folks came for a holiday. They couldn't understand anything. They're like, I had to interpret for them. And, and man, the Kiwis are just, they're very different, man. Their job and their career is a part of their life. And I mean, just a part. And for many of them, not an important part. Okay. For Americans, generally, right? Our life revolves around our job and our career. and that's just, it's a different perspective, especially with a lot of my staff. It was a difficult place to have staff, because they didn't care, man. If they had enough money for the week, they're coming to work the rest of the week. And it's socialized. It's very socialized, and there's a lot of handouts. And people, if they have the opportunity, I don't blame them, but they use it to their advantage and abuse the systems. It's different from that perspective, but and I feel like in general the work ethic is a different thing. Because with my career, my company, and everything, I had probably about 40 to 50% over staff employed, because half of them only came to work a day, right? So I got 20 people on staff, and 10 of them show up. It's just kind of the culture. It's kind of the thing, But the people are awesome. They're welcoming. They're nice. They're open-minded. They're about enjoying, right? They're about fun, and it's definitely the most beautiful place I've ever been in the world. They have a different perspective, man. They're very open-minded. No nuclear power there. It's very much of a green country. They're much more into recycling and caring for their environment than generally people are in the States, right? And more health conscious, more about eating naturally, and a lot of those kind of things that Americans necessarily are. And I'm talking in general, right? Because there's exceptions to all those things, to all all those points. But definitely way more liberal, from a political standpoint. Like the Liberal Party in America, that's kind of leaning kind of towards the Conservative Party.
I was going to say that exact same comment. Like the Conservative Party in the UK is probably the American Liberal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's kind of how it is, right? And the same thing in New Zealand. So they start even a step over, right? And then like the really liberal party, well, man, they're just really out there. And I'm not here to say one's better than the other. This is the landscape. And they have a couple of stronger parties, but they have about 8 or 9, right? And usually the bigger ones have to make a deal with a couple of smaller ones to get a majority. So no one ever really gets everything they want. It's not like in the States, or the UK, where you just have 2 just battering rams just against each other. You have 2 that are kind of big, and then you got these smaller ones, and they're kind of, this one's kind of having to make a few deals with these 2 or 3 parties to kind of get the majority, and these are kind of doing that, and you never really get totally and fully what you want, right? So there's just a lot of compromise, on that respect from the political side. But definitely, man, I mean, way more liberal than the...
I guess the US is so big that it's difficult to really cover everyone's opinions. It's probably why it's much easier to be left-wing on a small scale, and same with the other side, because you've got less people to have to convince. Kind of, capping off your journey then, if you could go back to when you first left home and kind of give yourself some advice, apart from maybe, don't take all your stuff with you when you go out in Spain for the first time. What advice might you give yourself just to make your journey or your time in either New Zealand or Spain more enriching, or do you feel you got out of it as much as you could? Would you like to have learned something earlier?
You know what? I wish I probably would have just worked on, like, my residency and citizenship stuff a little earlier, a little quicker. I kind of, I was back and forth, the first several years, like, well, I'm going to go back to the States. There's really no point to do that. It's spend the money, and, it's all out of paperwork and da-da-da-da. I wish I would have done that a little more quickly. And, man, you know what? I really wish that I would have got into some real estate there. I wish that instead of renting, and by the time that I was kind of up for doing something, it wasn't possible. The prices, man. I mean, Auckland is like one of the 4th or 5th most expensive cities to live in the world, man. I mean, like, the house prices in New Zealand, they go up 10% a year, man. It's unbelievable. It's not even fathomable, how expensive something is. And, the quality thing, is average for what you pay for. But, it is what it is. You're living where you're living. You're living on an island. in an awesome place, and, you don't have all the comforts of everything. So I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have got into some real estate earlier and, instead of flushing that money down the tube and just renting the whole time. But, the rent thing was good because when I needed to leave, I could leave pretty quickly, pretty easily. I wasn't tied down. And that was part of the thing too, where, it's like, well, I'm here for a year. All right. I've decided I'm going to stay another year, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to stay another year. And then, you're there like 5 or 6 years.
And what advice might you give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps in terms of traveling to Spain or New Zealand or from the US?
Get your documentation and stuff in line early. Know the rules, know what's up, know what you got, that kind of stuff. I would, now everything's so connected, with like Facebook groups and forums and everything. I would get on some groups or something to ask some of the locals, man. Ask them what it's like, ask them what it's about, see if you could, they probably even got websites and stuff out there now where, maybe you can connect with somebody and, they can give you, a ground level view of what it's really like, right? Because you read about something from the tourist, bureau, and, well, they're telling you all the beautiful stuff, right? All the great things to get you to come in and to show up and, all that. Every place you live in, there's some positive and negatives, right? And it's like, I just want the whole picture. I want, make sure that you kind of have the whole picture. Some of the stuff in New Zealand, man, it's like, I didn't realize this after a while. And it's different now than it used to be. But like for the summer, let's say for the summer, they have a couple stores that you can get a pedestal fan. They don't do ceiling fans really in New Zealand. They don't do central air and heat very often. It's kind of a luxury to have that. So people have, pedestal fans or box fans. So, I go out and I'm moving to a place and it's hot, right? And I'm like, man, I'm going to get a fan. There ain't none anywhere in the entire country to buy anywhere ever. None. It's all done, right? They've got their shipments in for the season, and if you didn't get one when the season started, you don't get one, right? And that was kind of before international stuff where you could, ship with Amazon and things like that. So it's like, dude, I'm going to have to buy one, off eBay that someone's selling if I'm going to get a fan, because you can't buy one at any of the hardware stores or like, they have a place called the Warehouse. It's kind of similar to a Walmart. There's none there. Everybody's sold out all over the damn country, Or that happened to me with like, got chilly, got cold. It was winter, and I waited around. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a little space heater, right? You just plug in, you just keep your door closed, heat your room. We ain't got none. They're all out. We ain't getting any till next year. So there's some interesting things about places, and like, sometimes, man, you just run out of stuff in New Zealand and we don't get it till next season, and like being, and you're like, that's unacceptable. Like you don't run out of something. You never run out. It's always there. If it's not on the shelf, the store is like really apologetic. They're going to give you something free if that's what you're trying to buy. Like there, it's just like, hey man, you know what? We don't have any until next season, and it's like, that's that. And if you get upset about it, they're like, what's your problem? We don't care. Quit being rude. It's a different thing with some of that kind of stuff, and your expectations of service and things, after COVID, a lot's changed. A lot of people's expectations have changed. It's a lot more like that. I watched, New Zealand kind of be like that with some of those things with supply chain issues and, hey man, I can't get to today. It'll happen tomorrow. And it used to be like that in the States. And then I got back here and then, it's like, wow, after COVID, it's kind of like that everywhere, So, it just is what it is, man. It is what it is. But yeah, I wouldn't trade anything, any experiences I've had, anything that I've done. But, talk to somebody that's going to give you the full spectrum, of something. Get on a forum, get on a Facebook page, something like that. And do your research, man. You do that hard work up front. It makes it a lot better. But like you take trips sometimes, right? Where you're just like, hey, you know what? I'm just rocking up with my backpack and I've got 2 weeks and that's the way I'm going to roll on this one, right? If that's the way your trip is, well, that's cool. If that's what your intentions are and your trip is, and I've done those before. But, if you've got intention, you got intention, I had intention to have a job and be prepared. I wanted to work. I needed the money, so it's like I had recruiters lined up. I had stuff, I had, interviews that when I got there, they were going to be confirmed and, stuff like that. So, I did a lot of pre-work. So when I hit the ground, man, I was ready. I didn't want to beat around the bush, trying to fiddle around figuring it out. Plus, I didn't want to waste the money, flying and showing up down there and, maybe this is going to work, maybe it didn't. I was like, this needs to work. So I just wanted to have that reassurance from all the research and everything that I had done. And, I had a recruiter actually. When I did my job thing, I had a recruiter and I talked to the guy several times. He's the one that kind of gave me the lay of the land of Auckland and the IT and all those kind of things and everything. And I got to be pretty good friends with the guy. He actually picked me up from the airport. Picked me from the airport, took me to a hostel. He said, look, when I moved here, this is where I stayed for a month before I got it going. You know what? It's crazy. I'm still friends with the guy today.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Great. Is there anything else you want to share about your life abroad?
Just go, man. Go and see. Every place that I go to, it's a new experience. It's something new. You build your well-roundedness a little bit more every time you go to a new country, or you experience something new, or you try some different food, or anything. I just think it's an education you can't get in a book.
Definitely. Thank you for your time and your knowledge and your many stories. And sorry to hear it ended so abruptly for you in New Zealand, but good to hear you're home and well and on the mend and very, very close to getting back to mobility, which is probably a huge thing for you, I'm sure. So hopefully by the time this podcast goes out, you'll be there.
I hope so. Yeah, it'd be awesome, And hey, man, I'm gonna be back at it, right? Picking my next place to go and do and see and find. So,
is there anything you want to promote or where people can find you or talk to you or get more about your story?
Man, I wrote a chapter in a book a while back. I don't really promote this, but this is just a little chapter. It's called, I have in this book, I was a co-author. It's called Breaking the Silence. If you're interested in reading a little bit more about my story or anything like that. And, I've sold the kettle corn business. And so, with everything that happened to me and usually, I go on and I talk about my cancer journey with people when I do podcasts. This was fun. This was cool. I got to talk about, all the places I've traveled and what I've done and everything. So I do a bit of speaking and coaching and things like that now that I've wound down the kettle corn things. Yeah, man, you might want to look me up, I do Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and I got the victory post because, hey, man, I'm winning. I'm still here. So
I'll be sure to put your socials in the show notes. We can find you and yeah, the reason why we tend to talk about you and more than just what happened to you late on in your journey. The whole journey is more important. Well, is important as well in a different sense. That's still part of your story. Yes, some things happened which you're talking about and educating people on and. Inspiring people who are maybe in the same situation that you were once in to kind of get out of it. So that's amazing that you're doing that. But you are much more than that as well, which hopefully we've touched upon and really, inspire people to go and live abroad like you achieved.
I appreciate it, James. Thanks for letting me come on, and reach some people that I haven't before. And yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, man. Just take the step, go do it, man. You won't regret it, you won't.
Brilliant. Yeah. Completely, you will not regret it. And if you do, then you can go home.
Yeah, right. Then just put the place for you, and now you're not going back.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Trent, and thank you for listening. And if you have enjoyed the podcast, please do go let us know. Please do like, subscribe, share with your friends, all the fun stuff which happens on social media. Please go and do it all. And as always, we'll see you next time for the Expat Pod.